Hey everyone, it's Jose Laya, and the first quarter numbers are out, and we're here today to share them with you. By providing you with this information, our goal is to give you a deeper insight into the local real estate market here in Miami and help you understand the current trends and developments in your desired area to help you make informed decisions about your home purchase and/or home sale. Today we're going to take a deep dive into the first quarter numbers. As we like to do, we're going to put it up on graphs for you to see. We're going to separate it into single family homes and condos in some of the more popular areas of the Miami real estate market, areas that we know well and areas that we do business in for many years. We're going to take a look at the first quarter numbers and put up on the graph the first quarter numbers of the previous 5 years going back, just to give us some context as to where we are today. We're then going to look at this quarter's, the first quarter numbers for 2024, and compare it to the previous 4 quarters, which would be pretty much every quarter for 2023. Just to give us a better idea as to where we are today and where the market may be going. We have a lot to cover. We're going to jump right in. We're going to start with the first graph for single family homes. We'll then go into the condo market and we'll then wrap it up with our summary. So let's jump right into that first graph. Here we go. Okay, so we have our first graph up. It's single family homes, first quarter data for this year that we just wrapped up the first quarter. And we're looking back the previous 5 years first quarter data for the areas of Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, Pinecrest, and Miami Beach, specifically South Beach, which is 33139. The reason we like to put previous year's data is because if we jump to the bottom line of Coconut Grove, the first quarter sales, and we show 41, we don't really know if 41 is good, bad, we don't know. So that's why we like to use previous year's data. It's not just us up here giving you our version of what's happening in the market and what we think is happening. We put the previous year's data to show you, hey, 41, is that good, bad? So let's jump in. So look at 41 sales for the first quarter of 2024, and then look at last year's first quarter. It was 30. Now, 2021 and 2022, those were the pandemic buying spree years when we had ultra low interest rates, and it's really not fair to use that data to compare it to anything else, which is why we like to keep 2019 up there, because we feel 2019 was the last normal real estate market here in Miami. So it gives us a true barometer as to what to expect as far as number of sales in the real estate market here. So look at that. In 2019, there was 47 sales in Coconut Grove. This year, there's 41. A little bit off, but kind of similar, especially if you compare it to 2020 and the other years, 21 and 22, which were just off the charts. So 41 seems okay, did better than last year, a little lower than 2019. Let's jump over to Coral Gables, 78 sales versus 100 for last year. But again, let's look at 2019. And in 2019, there was 80, so a little bit lower, but kind of similar. Pinecrest had 40 versus 34 for last year, but a little bit more than 2019, which was 38. And then Miami Beach had 9 sales in this first quarter versus 13 last year. But if you go back to the previous year's data, we look at 10. So what we can gather just from seeing this is that the number of sales, even though it was higher in Coconut Grove, it was actually lower in all other segments that we have here for the single family homes. One key thing that we want to highlight here is while the number of sales seems to be getting back to a more normal pace, to a more normal market, it's reverting back to the mean, we noticed that pricing since 2019 to 2024 for single family homes in these segments that we're covering, pricing has doubled in all these areas. Pricing has doubled, which is pretty incredible. We did notice that since about the summer of 2022 to now 2024, the pricing has increased, but at a much slower pace. So we did want to highlight that. Pricing has doubled since 2019 in single family homes. We're now going to show you the the rolling 4 quarters, previous 4 quarters, to see how it did to this first quarter for 2024. Let's go into that graph now. Okay, so now we have the graph up for the first quarter of 2024 and comparing it to the previous 4 quarters, just to get an idea as to where we are today in the market and where we may be going. So if we jump into the graph, notice the start from the first to second quarter for 2023. Sales were starting to ramp up. And then once it hit the third quarter, boom, everything just paused. The market went on pause. That's when rates shot up to over 8%, and it really spooked the markets. So we had a strong first half of the year last year, slowed down in the second half, but then now look at the first quarter of 2024, which is the bottom line there. Sales from the fourth quarter to the first quarter, they went up pretty much across the board. I mean, they went from 34 to 41 in Coconut Grove. That's a big increase. 57 to 78 in the Gables. 33 to 40 in Pinecrest. And Miami Beach went from 2 to 9 in the first quarter. So the number of sales picked up, which is a good sign. Another thing to note is that across the board, prices have increased steadily. The only area that did not increase in pricing was Coral Gables, which was interesting to see that. The median price per square foot in the fourth quarter was $836. And in the first quarter, it went down to $807. But if you look at $807 for the previous 4 quarters, it's actually right in line with where Coral Gables needs to be. But we'll keep our eye on that just in case anything changes going forward. So while the second half of last year, the market slowed down, it seems that this first quarter, the number of sales has picked up. So let's see where that leads us moving forward. We're now going to jump into the graph for the condo market to show you that breakdown. Here we go. So now we have the graph up for the condo market, and we have the previous 5 years first quarter data in the segments of the market of South of 5th, which is in Miami Beach, South Beach, downtown Miami, Brickell, and Coconut Grove. These are some of the more popular areas in Miami for the condo market, areas that we know well and do business in as well. So let's jump right into the graph. South of 5th had 49 sales this first quarter. Look at last year, they had 62. It's off. And if you even go back a few years, look at 2019, there was 59. So 49 is definitely lower. Let's keep our eye on that. Downtown Miami, 89 sales this first quarter. Last year, 118, lower again. Go back to 2019 in downtown Miami, 94. Jump over to Brickell. Brickell had 226 sales this first quarter. Last year, 307. 2019, 201. So a little bit higher. Coconut Grove is the only segment that we noticed that sales actually increased from last year, first quarter, which was 51 sales. This first quarter, they had 59. If you go back to the previous years, 2019 had 56. So just about there. But what we can notice in the number of sales in the condo market seems to be declining, which is in stark contrast to the single family housing market, which we just showed you that graph, where sales increased from the fourth quarter to the first. They went up. Here in the condo market, sales actually slowed from the fourth quarter to the first, with the exception of Coconut Grove. We also looked at pricing. Now, while pricing for the single family housing market in all segments that we covered has doubled since 2019, in these 4 areas that we cover, only one area had pricing double since 2019. And that's Coconut Grove was the only area where pricing has doubled in the last 5 years. The other areas had an average increase in pricing of 75% in the last 5 years. So not quite double, but still pretty good. Let's jump into the first quarter data and compare it to the previous 4 quarters, just to get a better idea as to where we are and where we're headed. Let's jump into that graph now. So in contrast to the single family homes that we saw the sales pick up across the board from the fourth quarter to this first quarter, you can clearly see in the condo market, things actually kind of slowed down and started to stabilize. The only exception to that was South of 5th that went from 32 to 49. But if you look at the number of sales, 49 compared to the previous 4 quarters in South of 5th, it's still low. So we truly feel as we highlighted this in our previous video about last year's sales, that the condo market, specifically the condo market, is experiencing a decline in sales as a result of skyrocketing insurance premiums, skyrocketing maintenance fees, and forced special assessments, which are all adding to the costs that buyers incur when buying a condo. This is something that we want to reiterate to you, and we're gonna keep our eyes on this because we feel that for the foreseeable future, until all this gets ironed out, we feel that this is going to affect the condo market a lot more than it will the single family housing market, especially when it comes to quality of life. Living in condos, as I've incurred in the last few years, not only when they pass special assessments, but when they pass special assessments, a lot of times they'll close down the amenities to redo them or reinforce them. So we've seen some buildings have their pools closed for 1 year, 2 years. We've seen balconies closed in all the units for 4 months, 6 months, sometimes more. On top of that, you get all the dirt, all the dust, all the debris, all the noise of the construction. So quality of life issues are a factor as well. It doesn't get much play in the news, but we can tell you from personal experience and from being in the markets daily that it is starting to affect sales in the condo market. So that's something that we wanted to have you guys take note, and we wanted to highlight because we feel it doesn't get enough press out there. And we are going to keep our eyes on that and let you know how that unfolds, especially for this coming year. So that's the data from the condo market. Let's jump right in now to our summary. Here we go. So how's the market doing? While we can clearly see that the number of sales is reverting back to a mean, and prices have obviously increased dramatically since 2019, we have seen sales level off and pricing increases have slowed since about the summer of 2022 across the board. The demand is still there, where if you price your property correctly, you will sell it in under 30 days. If you don't price it correctly, we have started to see the number of days on the market increase as buyers are very sensitive to pricing for obvious reasons that we've highlighted. Those are some of the headwinds that we're facing in the market. You have higher interest rates, higher insurance premiums. If you're buying a condo, higher maintenance fees, 4 special assessments. There's a lot of costs that have increased for buyers, so they're very sensitive to price. So sellers, please listen to your real estate agent when pricing your property if you want to sell it in this market. Interest rates. We've noticed a market very sensitive to interest rates, and while we've seen buyers get a lot more comfortable in the 6 to 7% range, we clearly see that once interest rates go above 7%, the market gets spooked and things pause and buyers hold on. Not only do buyers hold on, but then that causes sellers to not list their property for sale. As sellers, once they sell, they become buyers as well. So the high interest rate environment, which clearly we saw a couple weeks ago when the Federal Reserve came out, and unfortunately they feel that inflation is still running a little bit higher than expected. So they're gonna hold off on lowering interest rates, which we feel that we may not even see any interest rate reductions for 2024. One other thing to point out, we've been in the market for 18 years, and in our experience, a lot of people aren't talking about this yet, but this is an election year, and a very important election year. As we get closer to the elections, we've seen the market slow down, so that's something to take note. So it's going to be an interesting remainder of 2024, as we're not only heading into the elections, but it seems that we may have to deal with higher interest rates for the foreseeable future. That's it for now. I'm Jose Laya. I was born and raised right here in Miami. That's why I'm so passionate about making these videos and helping as many people as possible. That's why we do these things. I hope I was able to provide some value for someone out there and maybe help someone out there. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back soon. Have a great one.